Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. You doing okay today, Lars?
Well, I'm a Bengals fan, so I'm a little
That's
devastated.
right.
But I'm
Devastated.
moving. I'm moving forward. I'm getting through the day. So we wanted to have you on for multiple reasons, but number one is just a tweet that Alabama Athletic Director Greg Byrne put out, and recently, just here in the last hour and a half or so. And basically saying that, pending further review of the service fees by the city of Tuscaloosa, Alabama Athletics will not move forward with planned alcohol sales. Can you just give us a little background on and try to just explain sort of what the issue is here?
Well, I can only tell you what I think the issue is. I haven't talked to Greg about this or his tweet that I just saw a few minutes ago. So if I can put that caveat into place, because there may be something I'm missing. I mean, certainly there are things that you wish you could discuss in person instead of via social media, but hey, that's the world that we live in. As I understand it, the concern from the university is that the city council recently amended a policy that it's had in place now, where at events that are larger than 1,000 people, where beer is sold, there's a ticket fee for the public safety cost of it. And if you really think about it, and we do this to ourselves, actually, two of the three venues that qualify under today's policy are the Tuscaloosa Amphitheater and Bama Theater, because when you sell alcohol, you're going to have more public safety demands. Recently, the university applied, to our surprise, for Coleman Coliseum, and it's the same fee as Tuscaloosa Amphitheater. But during the course of the application for Coleman, it was disclosed that they were going to be doing the same for Bryant-Denny Stadium. And certainly that sets up a whole nother dynamic when you basically put an entire city within 3 square blocks, because it becomes then the responsibilities of the taxpayer, who has a significant investment already within the stadium, without the stadium, to deal with those issues. I mean, certainly you can harken back to the Tennessee Ole Miss game as kind of a harbinger of things that could come. And so the city council decided that we needed to put a fee in place similar to what we charge ourselves and put it in line with the size of the venue, is what they did last week in amending the ordinance itself. We're very blessed here in Tuscaloosa. We've never charged for game day services. We provide several $1 million ultimately in game day services. And I believe, according to the most recent data that I saw, we're the only SEC school that doesn't. We have a great partnership with UA. Certainly the advent of adding alcohol adds a new dynamic. And in the end, I have great respect for the university, certainly a great respect for what Greg has done, but I also have a great respect to public safety. And that is our sacred responsibility. And the men and women of Tuscaloosa Fire and Rescue and Tuscaloosa Police Department that carry it out, we're going to be the ones who are going to be dealing with those issues. We're going to be the ones who are transporting to and from jail. We're going to be the ones making those rescue runs. We're going to be the ones paying the jail costs. We'll be the ones who ultimately have to deal with the prosecution. There are effects with it, and taxpayers deserve to have those effects reimbursed, which is why those dollars go strictly into a public safety fund for just fire and police.
Walt Maddox, our guest, the mayor of Tuscaloosa, and we're talking about some of the comments earlier today from Greg Byrne, talking about the alcohol so-called tax on ticketing for Bryant-Denny Stadium. One of the quotes in there, he said, "While we greatly appreciate the partnership and the services provided by the city, public safety personnel, our athletic events are primarily staffed by UAPD and our security resource officers and privately held security. For these reasons and more, we don't think this is a reasonable approach that the city is attempting to take, and pending further review of the service fee." And I guess the point you're saying, look, we got to have this fee in order to pay for security for the stadium and surrounding areas. Greg Byrne is saying that the city does not provide those things as far as game day, I guess, protection or game day facilitate as far as security and other things that he's talking about there. You're saying that is not true, that you actually do provide those things. Was that what you're saying, or does the university the one that provides that, and that's why they're saying let us use that money for us to secure the stadium and the surrounding areas?
Because of the homeland security nature, we don't discuss the number of personnel that are involved. But without the resources of the Tuscaloosa Police Department, the immense resources of Tuscaloosa Police Department, Tuscaloosa Fire and Rescue, our infrastructure and public services, and other departments, you could not provide the top level of security both within the stadium property, and the stadium proper. I would strongly disagree with that statement. And those services are not, and by the way, the services that we're providing on campus property are not reimbursed. But this has always been a partnership. The new dynamic, quite frankly, is just the sale of alcohol within the stadium. Let's say theoretically you have an officer in the stadium and we're dealing with someone that's been drinking way too much. That officer is going to have to take that person, move them from the stadium, and then ultimately transport that officer to Metro Jail. That officer then has to be replaced because each area in that stadium has a level of protection that is guided by the most part by Tuscaloosa Police Department in coordination with our partners with UAPD and the federal and state government. So it's not as if we pull somebody off and that position's left vacant. And so now that person is being transported to jail, being processed in jail, will stay likely, if it's going to be an alcohol charge, 12 hours in jail, which we get the full jail cost of. And then ultimately at some point there'll be the prosecution side of this as well. Those will be costs that will be taken on by the taxpayers. And we know this, when you interject alcohol sales en masse within an area where you will have 100,000 people, you're going to need more security personnel than you have today. And so those are going to be additional costs that will come on to the city, as well as additional rescue costs as well. Now, certainly if the university feels that our resources are not needed, I would be surprised to know that, quite frankly. But, again, I haven't discussed the numbers that Greg is looking at and talking to, and just my experience, that would certainly be a surprise, I think, to all of us.
We're talking with Mayor Walt Maddox of Tuscaloosa, and in full disclosure, I worked for Walt back in 2018 when he won the Democratic nomination for governor, and unfortunately we came up just a little bit short in our race to win. I like the way
you said that. I tell you what, Lars, and one day I'll be as good of a writer as you. I'm gonna keep studying.
Well, it was it was one of the best experiences of my life working with you, and look, you crisscrossed the state on a bus, and you shook more hands and talked to more people than I would venture to guess anyone who is currently alive in this state. But in theory, are you in favor of alcohol sales at Bryant-Denny?
I think it can be done right. I mean, my daughter is a university student who loves Alabama football. My family and I go to University of Alabama football games, and this is my hometown. I think that you can have the alcohol sales and balance it with security. And the UA does everything first class. The UA does things right. So it's going to be administered in the right way. But with that just comes extra cost related to making certain it's a safe environment, and especially the cost if things go wrong, and they will, because when you put 100,000 people together, sometimes things can just go sideways. Those costs, the brunt of those costs are going to be on the taxpayers. And quite frankly, that responsibility is going to be of the men and women who wear those badges every single day, who take on that burden, who spend 20 hours on a game day to make certain that we all have a good time. we need to make certain that those costs are reimbursed. Right now, again, we have had a great partnership with the university in terms of that we have always worked with them on game day costs. Hopefully, that keeps the experience costs down. But if you add in this element, the burden of responsibility and cost come to the taxpayer of Tuscaloosa, and that's why I think you saw the council react the way that they did. Remember, we do this to ourselves. We're not asking UA to do something we're not doing to ourselves at the Tuscaloosa Amphitheater. But again, these discussions are important. I certainly wish they could have been discussions differently, but it is what it is. If the university decides not to sell alcohol, that's their decision. That's certainly their call. But if they do, there are additional costs that come with it, and the city, as you would with your small business or any business that's out there, you would want to recoup your cost for dealing with those extra issues. And there's so much on our law enforcement right now. I mean, there's so much on our fire and rescue. And I think it's only appropriate that those, costs be reimbursed to the taxpayers of the people.
Walt, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Always a pleasure to interview you and talk to you about things like this. I mean, one thing about it is that you're always willing to come on and discuss and talk no matter what. I know Greg Byrne is as well, so look forward to getting him on to talk about this and a particular topic. I know it's nothing that's going to mess with the relationship that you guys have, but it's something that, you have to, fight for on both sides. The only question I would have is that why not go get a alcohol company or a beer company to support this in a big monetary way to pay for all that?
Well, I think the idea is that, and again, I have an idea about how the university probably is approaching this, and again, they will do it first class. There's no doubt about that.
Right.
The university is the way that this works is just ensuring that each ticket, because there's going to be an overall cost for providing that service, that ticket cost encompasses what that cost may or likely would be to the city. This is the only way under Alabama law that we see we're able to do this. And that is why those funds that are generated from it have to go back into our public safety fund. And interesting to note that the council, our city council, there's nothing a mayor can do. Oftentimes people look at the city and they say the mayor did this. But the city council voted unanimously on this. And it was very, even the alcohol license for Coleman, although it eventually passed 6-1, that was touch and go because there was a lot of resistance in doing that. But the city council, and I don't vote, but the city council had great faith that the university would do a responsible job in doing it. But we also know we play a huge role in that, and ultimately we bear the negative cost of this. And that's what we're trying to protect the taxpayers and support our men and women who wear the badge.
Walt, as always, great stuff, my man. Thank you for being with us.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks, Walt.
Take care, guys.
All right, Mayor Walt Maddox, and getting the take from him as far as the comments earlier from Greg Byrne, University of Alabama, dealing with the alcohol issue for Bryant-Denny Stadium. All right, we'll continue to dive into that more. Hopefully, we get Greg Byrne on as well, either later in the show today or tomorrow. But love to hear his take on this and his side of it as well. As we saw the tweet earlier about it, they'll get this thing worked out. I know they will between the city and the university. They've all been able to work so well together over the years.